So, the feasts are upon us. So this week we are going to talk about Sukkot. And I'm doing things a little bit differently. This week I was busy and tired. I'm incredibly tired. That's why I have this stool behind me. I might sit for this service, actually. So I didn't prepare a slideshow or anything like that. I just have a bunch of passages open on Bible Gateway that we can refer to. Would anyone actually like to man the computer for me? Because I don't have a tool that I can, like maybe one of the kids maybe, or...
Is it the where you're just pushing it up and down?
Yeah, it's just over there on the computer back there. Just need to like switch between tabs for me. I have everything opened up. Yeah, that'd be great, man. Thank you.
He's doing editing and stuff like that. Just,
All right, tell me your name for the millionth time.
Ozias.
Ozias?
We call it Ozy for short.
Ozy? Okay, thank you. Awesome. Just trying to remember your name. All right, thank you, Ozy. So, I'm going to try to, with Sukkot, I'm going to have it's going to be a little bit more discussion based than usual. Again, like I said, I didn't really prepare anything, so I want to freely talk about it because a lot of what I can say about Sukkot is ultimately speculative. We have information in the Bible about how they conducted it, but a lot of the ideas about what takes place in the future and the future prophecy regarding it is conjecture. So, this right here is Leviticus 23:33, and this is just the instruction that Yahweh gave to the people of Israel on how to conduct themselves at the Feast of Sukkot and what it's for. Does anybody want to read this section?
I'll have to read it from my phone. Which version is this one?
This is ESV, but you can use any version you want. I'm not going to be a stickler about that.
Yes, he's pretty good too.
It's Leviticus 23:33.
Yahweh spoke to Moses, tell the Israelites, the 15th day of this, the 15th day of this seventh month is the festival of booths to Yahweh. It will last 7 days. On the first day, there will be a holy assembly. Don't do any work. For 7 consecutive days, bring a sacrifice by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day, there will be a holy assembly. Bring Yahweh a sacrifice by fire. This is the last festival of the year. Don't do any regular work. These are Yahweh's appointed festivals. Announce them as a holy assembly for bringing sacrifices by fire to Yahweh. Bring burnt offerings, grain offerings, other sacrifices, and a wine offering, each one on its special day. This is in addition to Yahweh's days of worship, your gifts, all your vows, and your free will offerings to Yahweh.
Okay. Let's see. Let's actually read 39 through 43. So, does anybody want to keep reading that, or I can read this last section. It says, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the feast of the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of splendid trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. You shall celebrate it as a feast to the Lord for the 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So that last section is really important because it tells us why they're doing it. They had to get out of Egypt as quickly as possible during the Passover, and then they had unleavened bread, and eventually they were dwelling in booths, and they ended up having to do it for 40 years, even though that was not the original plan. So it's a reminder to them of, this is the experience that you went through. You didn't have a home, but I took care of you anyway. It's the idea behind it. Anyone have any thoughts they want to share? Booths / tents / tabernacles, Sukkot. Yeah, it's
Temporary dwelling. You know, some people like if you're elder or whatever, some people get together in hotels. I mean, you know, they try to do the best that they can. You know, some people can't get up and down. You know what I mean? So we've done it all ways, and I'll tell you what, the tent stuff, campfire stuff is way better. But anyways, and you know, we do go to the river, we go to the brooks, we go cut off the branches, you know, and it's awesome. We tie them up and we stick them in water for that 7 days, and we rejoice before him. So it's a fun little tradition that we go around those branches.
And I was telling my wife that it would be nice to do it somewhere more tropical because they actually have palm trees there. You know?
But you guys have awesome ferns. Think about
We do.
that. I mean,
We do.
I'm like, Oregon has palm trees. There's our neighbor. I was like, there's palm trees in people's. They're right in the front yard. I'm like, you know.
Yeah, not naturally though. It's, but yeah,
They planted it there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a trip for them, right?
It's a fun little tradition that we do on the first day. So we go down and we grab those.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And as far as how God actually commands us to celebrate this feast, there's not a whole lot more information other than in the book of Numbers. I don't have this up here. You can look into it if you want. It's Numbers 29, starts verse 12, and he just talks about all the different sacrifices that you have to bring to him on each day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, we can go to the next tab. This is Deuteronomy 16, and I didn't scroll to the right spot. I'm sorry. Go to 13, please. Yeah, verse 13, yeah. Just scroll down. 16:13. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. So this is an important detail that I wanted to include in this, something worth talking about. Anybody want to read this? 13 through 17?
You should keep the Feast of Booths 7 days. When you have gathered in the produce from your what?
Threshing floor.
And your winepress, you should rejoice in your feast, and your son and your daughter, your male servant and your female servant, the Levites.
Levite, yeah.
I have trouble pronouncing another church.
Oh, sure. Sojourner, yeah. The Levite, the sojourner.
The fatherless and the widow who are within your town.
Do you need the text to be a little bit bigger? Do you need the text to be a little bit bigger?
You know how to open up
Yeah.
bigger, Rosie?
Can you scroll in a little bit? Just hold control and roll the thing. Wah!
There you go.
There you go.
Scrolling down to 13.
Yep, 13.
Keep going. Yeah, go down. There you
Yeah,
go.
honestly, I made like half a slideshow, half a presentation. I was like, I just don't have time to finish this.
Gotta go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
All right,
Right there.
there.
Okay, so the Levite, the sojourner.
For 7 days you should keep the feast to the Lord your God at the place that the Lord will choose, because the Lord your God will bless you in all the produce and all the works of your hands, so that you are altogether joyful.
Yep, 16 through 17. This is the really.
3 times a year, all the males should appear before the Lord your God at a place that you have chosen, at the dust of
Unleavened bread, yeah.
at the dust of weeks, and at the dust of booths. They should not appear before the Lord empty handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessings of the Lord your God that he has given you.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, prior to this, the first generation, they're there in the wilderness with the tent of meeting, so all the festivals were done right there at the tent of meeting. But this is before they're going to go over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan, and God's going to pick a place for himself, which ultimately ended up being Jerusalem. And so 3 times a year, everybody had to travel, go on a big quest, and get to Jerusalem and do their sacrifices at the Feast of Weeks, at unleavened bread, and this Tabernacles. It was very important. Is everything good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We can go to the next tab. Oh, actually, yep, no, you're good. Yeah, verse 9.
Scroll down. Yeah, there you go.
So this is something really interesting about the Feast of Tabernacles that I thought was unique. I'll read this section. It says, "Then Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them at the end of every 7 years At the time in the year of release, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God at the place that he will choose, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men, women, little ones, and the sojourner within your towns, that they may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God. And be careful to do all the words of this law, and that their children who have not known it may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. So every 7 years at the year of release, they had to read the entire Torah to the congregation during the Feast of Tabernacles, which is cool, interesting practice. Does anybody want to talk about the year of release, what they know? Yeah.
It's Jubilee, so every 7 years in our system, our American judicial system set up that way too. That's why creditors will release you after 7 years, that everything gets wiped out and restarts again. But we do make that tradition. We read the whole book of Deuteronomy during Sukkot, and because you can do a few chapters a day if you want. There's only 30 chapters, so it's a really awesome tradition because that way they know it. And I wish you go back and you wish your upbringing, like your parents would have read it, and like we taught these things, it'd just be a really awesome, beautiful thing. But now that we know, we just thank the Father for His mercy. Because now we know He's called us out, and so now we teach the people. So that it's really pretty cool. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Every 7 years, there was a number of things that happened, and the Jubilee wasn't every 7. That was.
Well, that was 49, but that's what I'm saying. That when there's a year of release, because 7, you look back with the interest on your brother, all these things that had happened in place. But 7 is a huge part. But yes, there was when you get back, your land would be the 49th, 50th year. So.
Yeah, and so if we look at verse 10 through 12 in this chapter, you'll see here that it is talking about, it's creating a huge parallel between the weekly Sabbath and the yearly Sabbath, how we work for 6 days and then on the 7th day we rest, and that applies to years as well. We work for 6 years and then the 7th year, the land has rest. And these are the verses that you can see that compare this very idea.
And it's true because we garden. Of course, we haven't yet because we just moved out here, but we've given our land a rest on the 7th year, and I'll tell you what, stuff comes up that we did not even plant, and you can eat off it. You're like, whoa, there's lettuces that pop up, there's offset tomatoes. It's pretty cool. So I'm like, gosh, people would follow that because we had a orchard, not we, but the person back in our town where we lived out the last 19 years, they had this orchard that was over 70 years old, and we just see the devastation of them not giving it the land rest. Apple trees were breaking, they weren't producing fruit. I mean, and it was like they're open 7 days a week all the time when their harvest stuff would come. Every single year, we were there for 19 years, and they never took a rest. And we just see the devastation. We talked about it one day. We're like, their apple, even though they've been open 70 years, they had produced more. We saw it dwindling from because we began born again. We moved it right in that town. We've seen it just like if they were to follow it, and that's why it's so important. It's not just for out there in Jerusalem, and that country is for the world, they need to take that rest. And just our earth would be really replenished.
Yeah, in the US right now, I've mentioned it before, there's a huge problem with topsoil erosion. It's just not retaining the nutrients it needs. And the actual thing that has been suggested by scientists and people that have been studying this is let the land rest. Not even from a biblical perspective, that's just what they came to through their research, but we're not doing it. Yeah, it's too bad. It's unfortunate. Leviticus 25, it's pretty much just repeating what we read here and what we talked about, how, you don't sow or reap in the 7th year. You let the land rest. But I would like to talk about Deuteronomy 15. It's the next one. Deuteronomy 15. Whoa, that doesn't look right. Just scroll down. It's just an ad. Okay. So this whole chapter, the first thing that it talks about in this chapter, this entire chapter, Deuteronomy 15, is about the year of release, the sabbatical year, the year that they read the entire Torah during Feast of Tabernacles. It's a great year. This first section is just repeat, talking about letting the land rest. We can scroll down a little bit. Go ahead and go to 7, So 7 through 11 is talking about a different topic. It's another thing that Tabitha brought up. Does anybody want to read this section?
If among you one of your brothers should become poor in any of your towns within your land that the Lord your God has given you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I apologize. That first section wasn't talking about the land. I apologize. Got my notes mixed up. It is about forgiving debt. So yes, every 7 years, any debt that anyone has is forgiven. So, and this is just elaborating on that. Go ahead.
It's like Tabitha was mentioned, the creditors, the same thing.
That's why,
That's
yeah, but people will go back now, and they're gonna go try to go back and sue when they find out there was fraud that's done, because in the government laws and stuff like that, and UCC code, there's no actually statute of limitations on fraud. And people are going back 20 years later and then going back and suing the people because they found out the fraud later. And it's like, no, we as a people, we're obeying the scriptures, we don't go back. We release them too. That 7 years, it's gone. You know what I mean? So trying to teach people that, that go on.
Yeah, and it's all forms of debt, personal debt, anything. Yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead, continue.
So you shall open your hand to him and lend him sufficient for his need, whatever it may be. Take care lest there be an unworthy thought in your heart when you say, the seventh year, the year of release is near, and your eye look grudgingly on your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and you cry to the Lord against you, and you be guilty of sin. You shall give to him freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give to him, because for this the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all that you undertake. For there will cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in your land.
I love how Yahweh had to preemptively say this, because that's exactly how people are. You know that this time of debt forgiveness is coming up. People are going to be inclined to be stingy and not want to give freely, but we are commanded to give freely in all situations. Go to the next one, Luke 6. Jesus addressed this directly. You can go down to verse 27.
But actually, on that last one, didn't it specifically say your brother first? I don't know if it said like everybody, but isn't your brother like those that walk in the
Anyone who's decided to be part of Israel, circumcised himself a part of the covenant, But, and I've talked about this before. I don't think you guys were here yet, but Jesus tells us to love our enemy. So if we wanted to be legalistic, then, how people say we're legalistic. If we really wanted to be that way, then we would only do the debt forgiveness of our brother. But we're told to love our enemies. And so I feel like it should be applied to everyone, whether they're in the walk or not.
I just mean, like just give a certain fixed amount of whatever you first think of those that are your brother first, first, everybody else. You don't have to.
Right. Actually, what Jesus says here is talking about the thing I just said. And I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Go down a little bit so that we can see verse 36 as well. Oh, I guess you'll have to scroll as people read. Okay, go ahead and go back up. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, does anybody want to read 27? Starting 27? I know that sound. Go ahead. Thank you, wife.
But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on a cheek, offer the other side also. And from one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you. From one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, and what benefit is it to you? For even sinners love those who love them.
Do you mind scrolling a little bit?
Now.
Thank you.
And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to give back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend and expect nothing in return, and your reward will be great. And you will be the sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful.
Yeah, so when I read that about the year of release, it really makes me just think about this, what Jesus had to say about it. It was a nice, good, refreshing reminder to people. I really think that he was addressing the year of release. Year of release is coming up. Stop withholding. Give freely, and don't expect to get anything back. Yeah.
It's interesting because that's future tense.
In which situation? And if you
The
lend.
latter portion of it.
Yeah, what's your point exactly? Can you elaborate?
Well, my point is, you're doing that in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's this sort of a hint of reward there. I mean, obviously it says reward,
Yeah, in the future, yeah.
but being a son of the Most High, that harkens back to Jeremiah 31, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Talking about the new covenant and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's still future tense.
Yeah. Well, that's a big recurring theme with what Jesus had to say was a delayed gratification. Essentially, is what you do. No, you're not going to get a reward right now. The reward with men is useless. It doesn't matter, but you will be rewarded by your Father. Yeah. Okay. So we can go back to Deuteronomy 15. So just go back to the previous tab. Thank you. If you scroll down to verse 12, yeah. Here, we can read it if we want, but essentially this is just about the conduct of how you free slaves every 7 years. Something interesting about the concept of slavery within Israel. And it does specifically say for a Hebrew, if you have a Hebrew slave. It's released every 7 years. And what's great about that too is that they're not just released. If you, where is it? No, go back up. And 13, verse 13, he says, and when you let him go free from you, you shall not let him go empty-handed. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock, out of your threshing floor, out of your winepress. As the Lord your God has blessed you, you shall give to him. I love that. It's not just freeing of the slaves. You free the slaves, but you also provide for them to get started in their own life. It's awesome.
Is there a passage that talks about non-Hebrew slaves?
Yeah, there is, but I don't have that right now. Does anybody have a reference for Victoria? I'm sorry, Vika. All right. Yeah, anyway, so I just had this there to really clarify what the year of release is, because I think that's really significant and really ties into the entire concept of Tabernacles, as we'll see a little bit more. Because something that's really interesting about the Feast of Tabernacles is that it is an 8-day long feast. You have the 7 days, and then you have the 8th day. A lot of people will call it the Great 8th Day or the Great Last Day. They have different names for it, but Yahweh never calls it that. He just says the 8th day. So 8 is kind of an interesting number in the Bible that we see repeatedly. You can go to, not the next tab, but the one after that, Leviticus 25. More ads. Cool. So this is just talking about the Sabbath year some more, but what's interesting about it is when we go to verse 8, the year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee. And so the year of Jubilee says, you shall count 7 weeks of years. 7 weeks of years, just a series of 7 years. So count 7 years, 7 times 7. So 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. Then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land. And you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you when each of you shall return to his property and each of you shall return to his clan. That 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor the grapes of the undressed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You may eat the produce of the field. So something that I have read about jubilees, and I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, is that it calls it the 50th year, and I've seen arguments that the 50th year was actually the 49th year, and that it wasn't an additional year after the year of release, but it was the same year, just the 7th instance of it. Does anybody have clarification on that? Because I had understood it to be after the 49 years, then you have an additional year of Jubilee. But I don't know, I read differently recently. No thoughts on it? Okay.
I read something earlier that said it's 6th year, but it's the 7th year that you do it. That's at the start, so you're not in the 7th year. You're at the end of the 6th year when all this starts.
Okay, so the year of Jubilee would replace the 7th year of release.
Right.
So, okay. What was your thoughts on that year?
No, I always see it as the 50th year. It's a full year though, it's not, it's not like you're gonna be planting miss on point in
Right.
reading, so.
Yeah, so differing thoughts. I need to look into it a little bit more then on that. But yeah, I had always understood it as the 50th year, but you saw it differently. Okay. Well, if it is the way that we understand it, then this is an instance where we see a set of 8, 7 years and then an additional year, and it's a year of great release, a great year of redemption of property. People go back to their own homes and they're able to buy back their property, and there's all sorts of logistics surrounding that. If we go down a little bit to 25 in the same chapter, we don't have to read all of this because a lot of it's just logistics about how you buy your land back. But you are entitled to buy your own land back. In fact, God says that you shall not own any land in perpetuity. Go up a little bit, actually. I love this passage, 23. Does anybody want to read 23 and 24?
And the land shall not be sold in perpetuity, the land is mine. For you are strangers and sojourners with me, and in all the countries you possess, you shall allow a redemption of the land.
Thank you. So yes, this is called Sojourn Fellowship Church because I just love the idea of being a sojourner, being brought into Israel. But even here, this is a great passage because God is calling the Israelites themselves sojourners. The land doesn't belong to them, it's God's. And so the people who had their clans and their property, they're not able to own it forever unless it's given to them in that way. Everybody who had property before was in their family line has the right to come back during the year of Jubilee and buy it back from them. You can't deny them. So I thought that was just an interesting concept. So the year of Jubilee kind of represents this year of a reset of the land. It's almost just like bringing everything back to status quo. Yeah.
How does I'm trying to wrap my head around that, if everybody in your family line grew up on the same land, so all of a sudden if you were living wherever, would there be your cousins, your uncles, everybody now all of a sudden you guys 10 of you or 20 of you live in the same piece of land?
Yeah, I mean, they lived together, but once they got into Canaan, they started spreading out all over the place. So this was kind of more for a future situation. I don't think they had to deal with it too much while they're in the wilderness. But yeah.
Plantations though, that people would actually, because Abraham extended his tent when he'd have a family who come live, their children had daughters, sons, and all that stuff. So when you get married, just like in plantation times, how many families actually used to live together even 200 years ago? I still even know some families today that will have 50 acres or 150 acres, and they have 4 or 5 families and they're all still connected. So, but you can go back and claim, you guys, if you don't even know this, you can go back and actually claim your ancestors' land. It has to be all done through the treasury, it has to be done through the IRS, it has to be done through the state, because they have actually held everything in abeyance right now. It's all held in abeyance. We do have an estate up there, and we're very wealthy, you just have to claim it, and first in line is first in time. So that's another story for another time, but yeah, it's really amazing stuff that I found out.
Yeah, and you think about it too, the Jubilee year, it only happened once every 50 years, and a lot can happen in 50 years. I mean, think about the US history, the Jubilee year would have only happened 5 times in the entire country's lifespan. So yeah, a lot can happen. But yeah, it's cool, it's amazing. Year of reset. So that's an instance of 8. You don't see 8 too often in the Bible. Sometimes, you see it not as much as 7, definitely, but 8 is kind of an interesting repeating number. So, did I not put up Leviticus 23? Could you go to Leviticus 23 for me? Yeah, I didn't leave a tab open for that. I apologize.
You just gotta go Google it, yeah.
Yeah, just...
Yeah.
there might be a Leviticus, the very, very first tab. Perfect, thank you. Okay. Can you go to verse 15? Appreciate it. So this is another instance of 8, and what's really cool about this is it perfectly reflects the Jubilee year. This is how you calculate the Feast of First Fruits, or the Feast of Weeks, I apologize. So, you shall count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. He's specifically referring to the Feast of First Fruits right here. So 7 full weeks from the Feast of First Fruits. You shall count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. You shall present a grain offering of new grain to the Lord. And I don't want to get too much into the Feast of First Fruits today. That'll be for another day. But the way that you calculate the Feast of Weeks is really interesting. It's 7 sets of 7, and then you have the 8th day at the end of the last set of 7. So just very much the same way that you calculate a Jubilee year, just on the scale of days as opposed to years. Thank you. And what's great about the Feast of Weeks is the Feast of Weeks is actually a wheat harvest. It's where they finally have their fruits of their labor come to fruition. Yeah. Also, and the Feast of Weeks for a more modern, significant thing, and this is what everybody points to. A lot of people say this was the first Pentecost, but it wasn't. If you click over there on Acts 2, at the top. Acts 2 at the top, it's
The tab.
it's this tab right here. Thank you, sir. Acts 2, just the first section right there.
Doing real good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, when the day of Pentecost arrived, they were all together in one place. And suddenly there came from heaven a mighty sound, a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and it filled the entire house they were sitting in. So this is after Jesus has ascended, and the apostles are sitting together, and they kind of are trying to figuring out what to do at this point. And they're gathered. It says Pentecost, of course, because of the Greek translation, but this is the Feast of Weeks. And this is when the Holy Spirit rushed upon the apostles, and their ministries really took off and began. So from the Feast of Weeks, we have the idea of everything coming to fruition, the thing that is being gathered in, the fulfillment of something that you've been waiting on. You know, the Spirit comes in, the wheat harvest is brought in. It's the culmination of the work and patience and effort. And something about that, too, is, can we switch over to 2 Corinthians? And, yeah, verse 21. I thought I had scrolled everything to the right spot. I'm sorry. Whoa! Verse 21. This is something that Paul just said in his letter to the Corinthians that I thought was really poignant and important to the idea of the Holy Spirit. He says, "And it is God who establishes us with you in Christ and has anointed us, and who has also put his seal on us and given us his Spirit in our hearts as a guarantee." Some translations say as a down payment. Because the idea of the new covenant that's coming in Jeremiah 31 is that we will be given the Holy Spirit in full measure. We will understand God's law to an innate degree that we won't have to teach it to anyone else anymore. So the idea of the Feast of Weeks is this idea of impending fulfillment of the Holy Spirit when we go to the New Jerusalem. And then the only other thing that I wanted to comment about, I thought I had a Genesis tab here. Okay, we can just talk about it. Unless somebody wants to look it up in their Bible, it's Genesis 17:9. Another instance that's really significant, really significant of 8 days is with the covenant of circumcision. Yeah, that's a really big, important one.
We have firsthand knowledge. It literally clots on the 8th day compared to any other time.
Oh yeah, there's lots of medical reasons for it. We found it's amazing. It's almost like Yahweh knew how we were built.
Interesting.
Yeah, who would have thought? Okay, so it's 17:9.
17 what?
9.
Genesis 17:9. Yeah.
God spoke unto Abraham, "Thou shalt keep my covenant, thou and thy seed after thee in generation. This is my covenant you shall keep between me and you, and thy seed after thee. Let every man among you be circumcised. That is, he shall circumcise the foreskin of your flesh, and it is a sign of the covenant between me and you. Every man child on the 8th day among you shall be circumcised in your generations. He that is born in thy house, and he is brought with money of any stranger which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, which is brought with thy money, he must be circumcised. So my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. But the uncircumcised man child, whose flesh and foreskin is not circumcised, even that person shall be cut off from his people, because he has broken my covenant."
Okay, that's fine right there. Yeah, so the idea, the really important thing about circumcision, it wasn't just a health practice. No, it was the sign of the covenant between Abraham and subsequently the Israelites, everyone, that you belong to God and he will be your God. So it is a covenant of belonging to each other.
And
Happens.
we know 2 people physically, that one guy did it at 44, and then we have a close friend that when he was compelled,
Yeah.
actually just did it, 3 years ago? Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had to be rough.
Well, I mean, he was, first of all, I was like, how old was Draven? Draven was 9, he's 21 now. My husband and him went out there because this guy was like being pressured by his family to be circumcised. And my husband went out there and flew out to Missouri because it's his best friend. He said, listen, he's like, you need to do this only because you are doing this between you and the Father. It's not anybody's business who does it. Who, you know, do not let your wife pressure you into doing this. Do not let your fellowship pressure you into do this. It is between you and the Father. And the guy was like, he backed off. He's like, I'm not getting it done. And it wasn't until then, until like I said 3 years ago. So when our son was 17, so 7 years later after the fact, is when he felt compelled to do it. If you go in the new covenant, Timothy, one of them, Timothy or Titus, one of them was compelled to do it, the other one wasn't. And I got a great teaching on the Mila and the Pila, the difference. Because they're ripping so much foreskin off, and this is where the mutilation comes in. And they're not supposed to. Joshua said at the hill of the foreskin, you have to do it on the top. You don't take it from that line that goes all the way from the tip all the way to the anus. You don't take it under. It's a hard cartilage. It's just on the top. That's it. So yeah, so I had a lot of that because we had 2 boys, you know, after, you know, we started learning about this years ago, so.
Yeah, we talked about, in this place, we talked about Galatians. We spent a big conversation on Galatians because people bring up circumcision a lot and pointing out how a lot of the people that traveled with Paul weren't forced to be circumcised because, yes, it is a matter of between you and...
Yeah, it is, and that's it, it's like, you know.
Yeah.
It's nobody's business, it's not between, you know, and what happens was back in the word, I don't know if you guys know what the word gymnasium really means naked. And so they were in these big bath halls, and so back then, the people were, you could regrow your foreskin because they were pulling it down, and so nobody could tell, but then it was the Pharisees, the ones that were like, no, we're gonna make sure we're gonna take off more because you're not gonna hide your circumcision, and that's where you have mutilation coming in, where they've damaged the whole penis because of that, and they just took way too much off. It's called the Mila and Pila, but I have a whole study, if anybody wants, you get my number, and it is amazing, but I'll tell you what, yeah, yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most important thing I'll say about circumcision in general, though, is, again, it's more important that we conduct ourselves according to what Yahweh wants for us in the day-to-day. And circumcision is important when you eventually get to it, but it's a physical sign. It's showy. It's like, we spent the other day making tzitzits, and whether you wear tzitzits or not is not nearly as important as long as you know, treating your brothers with love. You want to get that right. You can wear the tzitzit, circumcise yourself, do all the other things, have the Jesus fish on your car. It doesn't matter if you're not conducting yourself right.
They're just reminders too.
They're just reminders and signs.
It's like baptism, circumcision.
Yeah, just like baptism. Yeah, it is a similar concept, yeah.
The world will know who we are by how we treat each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'll throw it in my possessions, by the way, you live in that, yep.
Okay, so we brought it up earlier, Jeremiah 31, if you go to that, talking about the covenant. So circumcision was a sign of the covenant. If you go up to verse 31. Jeremiah 31:31. Does anybody else want to read this? It's through verse 40, so it's a little lengthier.
Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, a covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I'll remember their sin no more. Is there more?
Yeah, there's a little bit more. Do you mind scrolling down a little bit?
Oh, boy.
I said through 40. Yeah, through 40. If somebody else wants to take over for her.
Oh, you want to?
Okay. Thus says the Lord, who gives the sun for light by day and the fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If this fixed order departs from before me, declares the Lord, then shall the offspring of Israel cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus says the Lord, if the heavens above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth below can be explored, then I will cast off all the offspring of Israel for all that they have done, declares the Lord. And behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when the city shall be rebuilt for the Lord from the tower of Hananel to the corner gate. And the measuring line shall go out farther, straight to the hill Arab, and shall then turn to go up. The whole valley of the dead bodies and the ashes, and all the fields as far as the brook Kidron to the corner of the horse gate to the east, shall be sacred to the Lord. This shall not be plucked up or overthrown anymore forever.
Yes, so we have the promise of the new covenant, which is great. So we have this recurring theme of 8, like I said, with the Jubilee year. It's almost like a land reset. Everything is fulfilled to people. It's brought back to its original standing. And then we have, with circumcision, the establishment of the covenant and the hope of the new covenant, also 8th day. We have the harvest with the Feast of Weeks, which occurs on the 8th day after the 7th set of 7. We see all this idea of fulfillment, covenant, restoration. We see all these themes present in this idea of 8. So this is where we get into the pure speculation part of it. The idea is that all the feasts have a future prophecy tied to them in the hopes of resurrection, the New Jerusalem, Jesus returning. And the idea of tabernacles that people often share is that it has 6 days of work. Then we have the millennial reign for 1,000 years represents the 7th day. And then the 8th day is all of these things, the new covenant, the fulfillment of the land, the rest, the ultimate rest, which is entering into the New Jerusalem. It's the idea of entering into eternity. That the 8th day of the feast is the idea of entering into eternity. Everything's been complete. The earthly rest has been complete, and everything's renewed. The new covenant, everything is given to us.
So between 6 and 7 is the millennial.
That's the idea, is that the 7th day represents the millennial reign. But I've heard other people have different ideas where the entire 7 days just represents our work, and then the 8th day is the millennial reign. People have different ideas on this. But, and again, like I said, it's conjecture. I think it's a great idea. I don't know if we have any scripture that anyone can think of that directly makes that blatantly clear, but it's mostly just based on recognizing patterns and the hopes that the feast will bring us in the future. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Yeah.
The only thing I can think of right off is the whole day with Yahweh is 1,000 years.
Right, yeah, people tie that a lot, yeah.
Is that in the Bible somewhere?
Huh?
Is that in the Bible somewhere?
Yes, it is, yeah. 1,000 years is like a day to God, a day is like 1,000 years.
I see.
I think it was just to emphasize the element of his timelessness.
Right.
I don't know how literal that is, but it's just. But you know what? The idea that man would have 6,000 years on earth and then 1,000-year millennial reign, and then that would be the end of it, that's very much in Yahweh's patterns. And he does like his patterns. That is very much in character for him. But I can't sit here and tell you that's what the Bible teaches us. It doesn't.
Just a cool novelty, the idea.
It's a cool novel idea. Yeah, but I'm less concerned with that than just, we know that Jesus is going to return. We know the kingdom is going to be established. We know, yeah.
I'll add to that a little something. I don't want to go too far off into the woods on this.
Sure.
If you're looking at the Mazarot, I believe that there is kind of a tie-in with the Mazarot and when things happen.
Okay.
On the planet, and I'm thinking even as far as if you take the idea, where they go through and they kind of figure out how long people live throughout Scripture,
Yeah.
and then they end up with we're in 57 or 58.
Oh, you're talking about the Anno Mundi? The Anno Mundi date?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So there does seem to be a correlation with the month road, or I hate to say constellations because that's used in astrology a lot, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, basically. The idea of it isn't the same, but
Right.
anyway, there is kind of a correlation between, I'm going to say the ages.
Mm-hmm. Like the zodiac ages you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, see, the zodiac, man, gets such a bad rap now. It was originally created just as a timekeeping piece.
Yeah.
It helped us if it's part of our clock. It's been corrupted, but it is a useful tool. Yeah, not the horoscopes, but just the actual constellations and how they move in the sky. It is helpful. Yeah, because there's a lot of ideas where when we reach the Anno Mundi year of 6,000, that's when the millennial reign.
Well, back in the 60s, there used to be a whole age of Aquarius bit.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of a literal thing of what had taken place. I hate using those names because it just, people are like, oh, my horse.
Yeah. We know what you're saying, yeah.
I believe around the time that Yeshua was killed was when they moved into, I want to say it would be the fish
Pisces. Okay.
But anyway, it is interesting how those kind of flow.
Yeah. Well, this is something that we're going to have to discuss when we talk about the calendar after the fall feast. It's definitely going to be a big part of that.
Maybe that should be a sideline conversation.
Okay.
It's going to get really confusing.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Oh, it'll be longer in a few weeks.
Oh, God.
Yeah, there's some awesome studies out there on the Nazareth, so there is people studying
We
about it.
want to figure it out to make sure we're doing
Yeah, that's what I'm
God
saying.
wants us to do.
Let's do that first.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff is stuff we get to pick at. Let's do the thing that causes Father to be happy with us. If that's a thing.
Yeah. Really, I wish.
I think it is a joke.
What's in Job?
Nazareth.
Oh, okay.
Talks about the ladies.
38, 32.
Job 38:32. Would you mind pulling that up, actually? Job 38:32. I want to look at it. Huh?
Just search it, it's not on there. Someone has to search it.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this. Usually I have a slideshow that I just control everything with, but I didn't make one this week. I'm tired. I'm ready for Tabernacles.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't say it, I'm just, you said it.
Yeah, Jake, Joe.
Huh? Job, yeah, Job 38:32.
Mine was really slow today.
Check that out, right?
Today,
38,
they're all day, and you gotta check to see if there's gonna be any left.
Lead forth the Mazzaroth in their season. Can you guide the bear with its children? Can you click on the commentator's note next to Mazzaroth? Just the little B there. The little B. I just want to see what they say.
Pull on down.
Probably the name of a constellation. Wow, great note.
Yeah. There's books out there if you wanted to read on Pleiades.
This reminds me of, I was just saying with Vika just the other day that in First Genesis, when it talks about the sun, moon, and stars will be there for your seasons, how the actual Hebrew word is moedim. It's for the appointed times, but we just translate it seasons. A terrible translation. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, there's signs for us to figure things out, time. It's our clock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not supposed to be our little feet, though. They're supposed to be there for, like you said, their purpose.
Right.
So I completely, because when you said that about, the age of Aquarius, everybody, I think anybody who has been any one of us, has dabbled in that area. And so we tread, I know that I tread lightly there, and I take it very seriously as well. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, when you look up stuff like that, you really got to cut through all the pagan New Age stuff
Yeah.
associated with it. It's just try to get to the matter of timekeeping. It's
Yeah, I think we've all went through that period of time, like, so what is my
I got a dang tattoo because I was a Leo, and I got a super line.
oh no.
Because my friend, I used to buy her like birthday presents, Christmas, and everything. And once I had 18, her dad gave her a credit card. She's like, first present my best friend ever bought me. I've known her since first grade, right? And she's like, here, let me buy you something you want. And she's like, I'll buy you a tattoo. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I was so dumb. And then when I became born in 2005, I was like, I regret this. And then I anointed it with oil and I rubbed it because it's on an angle. And I'll tell you what, if you guys do this to your own arm, I felt this tingling for 5 weeks after I was breaking the curse. Like, Father, forgive me, I didn't, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I got a tattoo on my 18th birthday, so I have to live with that reminder. Yeah.
I got one at 17, drunk in the morning.
Yeah.
That's what you think about this is, back in the day it was for jailhouse or army people, right? And then now it's like they glorify it because there's tattoo shops on every corner, and it's like everybody's just, they're getting younger and younger. It's just like, and then it's from head to toe now, and it's nothing like attractive. It's like, not at all. It's just nutty.
Okay, well, to get back to the Feast of Tabernacles, with the fall feasts, I really, huh?
Oh, just like, topic. I'll talk about it later.
Okay, all right. I really wish I had more to say about it. There's lots that we can talk about. There's lots of things that I can bring into like different instances when we see in the Bible when they celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles. Like when it talks about the year of release and reading the entire Torah during the Feast of Tabernacles. After Ezra and Nehemiah worked on restoring Jerusalem after the exile, when they finally had the walls done, that's what they did. Ezra, he stood before the entire congregation of Jerusalem and he read the Torah to them. And they freaked out, realized how much they'd been screwing up, and then they celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles. So we have lots of instances in the Bible of the Feast of Tabernacles, but not a lot that I think adds context to the way that it should be celebrated and its meaning and its significance. I mostly just focused on that. And like I said, I wish I had more to say about the fall feast because a lot of it is the idea with at least future application is that the spring feasts have been fulfilled and we're still waiting on the promise of the fall feasts. So when the spring feasts come around, we'll have a lot more to talk about on those than I do on the fall feasts. Because right now, again, it's a lot of it is just trying to recognize patterns and trying to figure out Yahweh's plan for us.
And also too, when he says, where I put my name at, because, I go back to the Samaritan woman, because before, when they were even traveling through the wilderness, they weren't in Jerusalem yet, but they were still keeping the feast, okay? In the wilderness, and if you go back and study in Numbers, the reason why he had to move them from camp to camp, because you have to get all these issues out of your heart. And sometimes it took them a week and they got moved. It took them 3 days and they got moved. Sometimes it's 5 years they were stuck in the same camp. And it's all about a heart issue, right? So when you go look at the Hebrew names of each camp they went in, there's very awesome significance in that. But then it's like you think about it, he says, wherever I put my name, we go back to the Samaritan woman, and she's like, oh, well, some say we have to go over there and worship God. And the Messiah said it's neither here or there. So it's everywhere. So wherever he puts his name, think about that. It's wherever he puts his name. And the Messiah says, where 2 or more are gathered, so you're gonna celebrate it how you want to do it, what he just commands us, and guess what, you come together, and it doesn't matter where, but I'll tell you what, we've seen from our first time doing it in our backyard, and then doing it all these other years, it's like we've been in places where there's 1,000 people, and we've been in places where it's more intimate, like 10 people, and I'll tell you what, the smaller ones are the better, because it's more intimate and stuff like that, and you get more stuff done, because of course when you get bigger crowds, a lot of stuff can happen, there was thievery, and there's just weird stuff going on, and just like, it was really nutty, so, because the borders will say where it's open wide, and you're going to need more security when you go in such a high place like that, because some people are not ready to, honor them. Maybe, they're just coming in because they're forced, because their parents are like, come on, you gotta do this, and they're just not, So or like somebody's there and just
something.
We see
One of the
when you get really big, but it's pretty cool. So it's like to me, it is awesome that when you do it more intimate, it's you learn those spiritual lessons.
Yeah, one of the things you brought up actually as something that's been on my mind occasionally, and it's kind of a double-edged sword concept because I love seeing this congregation grow, and I love seeing people come in, especially if they're new to Torah, and they have people who can support them and learn more about it. I love that. I love it. But at the same time, I do have that worry about like what's going to happen when it gets, big enough that it's not as intimate in discussions, if that happens. But for now, I'm glad it is. We can all discuss easily. Trying to imagine doing something like this with like a group of 100 people would be difficult.
Yeah, so if you go back to like the book of Acts, so it's like they were breaking bread and stuff in their homes, and they were sharing what they had to eat, because we don't believe in supporting like a church building, because we all have homes that we could share with each other. Even if you had an apartment that it was like 2-bedroom apartment, you're like, okay, we can meet at a park or something like that, because we know this stuff costs money, like lights and all that stuff. So it's like, to keep it where, and nobody's getting burdened, you go like, let's just share our homes with each other, or we can meet at a park, especially in the summertime or whatever. But it was like the model of the Acts when they were just coming together and they were doing stuff, gladness of their heart, but because you see how, so in what would you call it, like not personal, when you're in these big, huge 100,000 like Joel's.
Impersonal.
You got the franchises of the Lutherans, like it's just very not intimate, and there's people there, like you don't even know people's name, 500 people, you're like, you don't even know,
Well, like I always say, the point of getting together like this isn't to come here and listen to me stand up here and speak. It's why I try to encourage discussion. It's to learn together. It's to be together.
Yeah, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that, because when you're just cookie cutter and you're just like, let's say you're talking and everybody leaves, it's like there's no intimacy, and it's like people don't really understand intimacy. I'm not saying you guys, but I'm talking about intimacy where it's like just talking and conversating, get to know each other. That's intimate compared to like, okay, these people just think they can just go and jump into their state by going to a 3-hour sermon and then they leave, and it's like,
yeah. I don't want to be a congregation of people that do that just don't know each other's names and don't talk. Yeah.
Or there's one of that handful of people that are always working, that are always getting stuff done, and it's like, because they leave, they don't wanna help clean up, or just, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just stuff where it's like, hey, you know, it's like you go to the store and you
Yeah.
leave your car out.
My wife and I have actually been very blessed with the people that are here because I appreciate how much you guys help clean up afterwards. It is, yeah, we always appreciate it.
No.
Well, I appreciate that when we came and we were so new that you were starting at the beginning more. I mean, I really feel like that's important because we don't have the same foundation. We have, you know, a lifetime of a different foundation.
Yeah.
And you know, and so I think that that's just really important to put out there that I feel like you started at a place where James and I both could come in and we didn't feel like we felt overwhelmed, but we didn't feel overrun. And
Good.
that it wasn't something that we weren't able to understand.
Yeah.
And everyone has been really careful here, and then everybody coming in, you know, like we're understanding we need staying at home, and it's gonna be okay.
I have a little question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Today's the 29th, right?
Say what?
Today's the 29th,
Today is the 28th.
28th?
Yes.
Okay, so in 4 days I get my food stamps, and then next month is Halloween. Do you celebrate that?
No, I don't.
Oh, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I was thinking about if you did, I'd get some Halloween candy and my grandkids and stuff, and I thought that's not.
Yeah, no, I don't celebrate Halloween. Actually, that's something that's so disappointing to me is that you see these drives that are done, like these toy drives and clothing drives for children. And it's always tied to Christmas, and it's like I love the idea of providing for them, but you have to tie it to that. You know, it's.
And they only do it once a year, and it's just like when we grew up. Your parents would teach you something, you could absolutely need like a vacuum, they wait till Christmas, and it doesn't make any sense. Why would you make a holiday of a man-made stuff, or just like a birthday present? Why would you wait to give something and then when you use it then? Where it's like, you have a right to go bless your child. So we don't even do anything now. We don't do Mother's Day projects, we put maps and honor your mother, father, we don't do birthdays, it's self-idolatry, that's a whole other story. But anyways, you go back to Ecclesiastes 7:10, it says better to celebrate one's death than one's birth, right? So but there's times for celebration, you have somebody at a wedding or something like that, but I'll tell you what, it's like, if somebody needs something, then you do it, and there's just a weird spirit that goes around this Christmas time. It is not a thing, because there's most people that are kill themselves, suicide, there's all this stuff we get on his feast day.
Yeah, high
It's not
suicide
about
rate.
family members that show up or not, no more. Guess what, you'll never have it, there's a debt release that comes off your shoulder, because guess what, it's not about, oh, my aunt didn't come, or my mom didn't come, or the family's broken. It's not about, it's all about fault. And it's such an awesome thing that you feel this weight uplifted, because you just bless your brother, like, go ahead, have a happy feast, right? Compared to like Christmas, I was like, no, there's so much suicide and all this stuff, and it's a spirit out there, but it is not from him at all.
You remind me of something that you mentioned earlier. I wanted to make a comment on, and it's something that I've said about all the feasts. The last two feasts that I've talked about. But yeah, we saw in one of the passages that we're supposed to gather to Jerusalem during the Feast of Tabernacles, but that's because Yahweh was there. That's where He picked to dwell, and He's not there anymore. He's in heaven. So we can't physically gather to Him right now, but like what you said, it's about people gathering under God. So where two or more gathered, He's there. So it's about getting together in His name. So yeah.
Remember when He says the kingdom's within, and when you look at that word, it means at hand. It's at hand.
Kingdom's at hand.
Within. So it's like, think about that when you have the mind, because the kingdom's within, it's at hand, it's right now. So it's like, when you think about that, so that's what's cool about the Samaritan woman. She got one of the Messiah. It's like, you see their hair is right now. So it's what's beautiful about it. It's like, because if all the earth is His and everything in it,
It was also a unique time because the Messiah was right there.
Oh, yeah. This is the trip that you got to take back then, right? You would get the whole month up, you're walking, you got your flocks, and the males had to go. And think about that, that's where Zechariah 14 comes in. He says that those who do not come up to worship Him during the Feast of Sukkot, He's not going to reign in their land. And you think about it, there's got to be somebody that's representing Him in the town, the city, the Senate, all that stuff. Somebody's got to do it. And I'll tell you what, Reagan did say back in the 80s, like, this is, I think it's 84, this is the year of the Bible. So if you go look at us, like, there's this, you can still tell that His hand's still on America, there's still some peace there, but, there's some crazy stuff, but anyway.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to sit down and have more whatever intimate discussion than just talking about this at this point. So,
Two tables together.
yeah, we'll figure something out. I was going to ask, does anybody want to lead us in prayer today? I can do it. Okay. So let's pray then. Dear Yahweh, you are holy and awesome, and I appreciate that we're able to gather together and learn about you and learn about your special feasts for us and what they hold for us in the future and the peace and the comfort they bring us. So I pray that as we're all going into Tabernacles with whichever time we have figured out personally, that we are very rested and honor you as best as we can. And I pray that you be with us for the rest of the day as we go about our times, keeping our minds on you. And in your son's name, Jesus, amen. Okay, awesome. I'm going to sit down, free to stick around and chat as long as you want. I'm sure we'll have some good discussions.
Good, good, good.